You know, one of the questions that comes up, I've gotten this in just talking about this as something that we need to do. And it strikes me as a very strange question, actually, but it's a strange long-term question, makes sense short-term. And the question is this: if we increase productivity, won't that cost us jobs? And to me, the answer, you can't just like shut down productivity. That's sort of slowing the progress of civilization. But it is not to be callous about it. If you're talking about people who may find that threatening, and so how do you deal with that argument of productivity is good for rich people and corporations, but it's bad for workers?
Well, first of all, I agree, Bob, that it is a point that a lot of people think about, and frankly, economists have a term called the lump of labor fallacy. This idea that if you eliminate one job, it's gone forever. If that was the case, we'd all be out of work because we eliminated 70% of the jobs because we used to be farmers, and now we're 3% or 2% are farmers. The U.S. economy is, I don't know, what, 6 times more productive than 100 years ago, and we have more jobs. So in other words, jobs come from the supply side. We'll always have unless we're in a recession, which, but that has nothing to do with productivity. We'll always have enough jobs. The demand, I'm sort of like a Say's law person here. Demand for labor creates its own supply. Supply of labor creates its own demand. So we're not going to run out of jobs. Historically, when you look at the relationship between productivity and job growth, what you find is it's actually positive. In decades where we have high productivity growth, we have higher labor force growth and we have lower unemployment growth. So the issue, I believe, is not that we're going to run out of jobs. The issue is rather, if productivity doubles, that'll mean a little bit more labor market change and disruption. And therefore, it is incumbent upon policymakers to make sure that there's adequate community college and adequate unemployment insurance and these other kinds of policies. But, to me, it's just strange thinking about, people saying this now, because that used to be what America was all about. We were the country that had the highest productivity growth. That's why we became the richest country in the world. And now there's this stepping back from it, which is very troubling to me, because unless we keep raising our productivity, we're not going to be able to raise wages. It's as simple as that.
You mentioned earlier on that there really doesn't seem to be, or really isn't, I guess, a productivity goal in the federal R&D process. And that might be the answer, or part of the answer to this question, but where do you anticipate seeing pushback in these proposals, and how do you try to overcome them?
Sure. So when was the last time you read in the Financial Times or the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post or Business Week about the quarterly BLS productivity numbers?
Rarely.
Rarely, if never. Oh, well, better than never. And there's a simple reason for that. They never, ever report them. I get it. I'm on the email chain. I get them every 9 a.m. in the morning. I'm like, oh, this is terrible, we went down, or oh, this is good, we went up. But the financial media just completely ignores this. Why do they ignore it? Because economists ignore it, policymakers ignore it. So it's all sort of playing together. So, that's number one, is we just need to be talking about it more. A colleague of mine in Canada used to be, I think he was chief economist for the Toronto Dominion Bank, Don Drummond. He wrote, actually, there's a very good study, a journal on productivity out of Canada called the Journal of Living Standards, and they really do a great job on this. But he said productivity is like Voldemort in Harry Potter. It's a he who shall not be named. So a lot of policymakers, they don't want to talk about it because it implies job loss and the like, and I understand that. But I think pundits, think tanks, media, companies, we all need to be just talking about the productivity crisis we're in and why we need to do better. And I think if we did that, it would give policymakers a little bit more slack and comfort to talk about it, focus on it.
Yeah, I think just to add this from our point of view is that if we talk about economic growth over the long term, you have to talk about what drives economic growth. And because if you're not, you're just you know, people throw out numbers and goals about, oh, we're going to get 4% growth or 5% growth, or no, we're not. And, you know, the only way you can come anywhere close to what we need is to address the structural issues. And that means getting into the, you know, inevitably you have to get into productivity. You cannot ignore it. And how you increase productivity is terribly important. So it's not just some sort of hypothetical nerd issue. I would always say to everybody, if you care about the long-term federal budget outlook, you have to care about productivity.
Absolutely. I 100% agree, Bob.